Hey everybody, you're tuning in to our projects Q&A. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to start in a couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes.
While we're waiting for people to join, just like to ask if you guys are here, share this with your friends. Let people know that we're doing this Q&A and sharing about these opportunities.
Awesome. Yes, let's get started. We have a couple people here, so let me just have my video on here. You should be able to see my face. Welcome everybody. My name is Kristen and I'm the projects chair at SEDS-Canada. And I'll introduce sort of SEDS-Canada and a couple of our experiments here. So this is the first of 3 live Q&A sessions that we're doing. We'll have another one in the evening today. So like James said, if you have any friends that might be interested in our projects, definitely, tell them to join now. But if they don't make it, there's another one today at 5 p.m. Eastern. And then there is also another one on Tuesday. So hopefully you can sort of tell your friends about it and they can join us. But today we'll be sort of talking about these 3 projects. So CAN-RGX, CAN-SBX, and YSpacE, which we'll go into. All right. So just a little bit of background, who is SEDS-Canada? We have a mission, and it's to strengthen Canada's future in space by providing post-secondary students with unique projects, research programs, and professional development opportunities in all of the sectors related to space. So government, industry, and like academic. And we're Canada's only student-run nonprofit, and we work across Canada to inspire and empower students joining the space industry. So we like to say we're training the future space workforce. We're a member-based organization and we have members from almost every province and territory. Sort of tell your friends in PEI, Newfoundland, and all the territories if they want to join, we'd love to have them to sort of spread these opportunities. And like I said, we're training Canada's future space workforce. So we create sort of the platforms just for students to not only train themselves for that workforce, but also, advance Canada's space sector as well. All right, so a little bit of an outline here. For each session, we're going to cover all 3 projects. So we're going to start with the Canadian Reduced Gravity Experiment, CAN-RGX. Then we'll break for questions. We'll talk a little bit about the Stratospheric Balloon Experiment Design Challenge, and that's CAN-SBX. Then we'll break for questions again. And then we'll go over YSpacE and a final break for questions. So at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to toss them in the chat wherever you're viewing this live, and someone will curate those questions for us. Awesome. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Ben to talk about our Canadian Reduced Gravity Experiment Design Challenge.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Saunier. I'm the Assistant Project Manager for the CAN-RGX experiment this year. So I'll be just kind of giving you guys an overview of what the experiment is about, what you need to participate in it, and what the deadlines are for applying to the project. So CAN-RGX is an acronym for the Canadian Reduced Gravity Experiment Design Challenge. It's a competition for Canadian post-secondary students to design and test small scientific payloads on board the National Research Council's Falcon 20 aircraft. The airplane's been modified for reduced gravity flight in association with the Canadian Space Agency. These are the partners that we work with for the experiment. We also have some subject matter experts coming to us from University of Toronto as well as MIT. So this little diagram here shows you guys a little bit what the flight campaign looks like. And so the objective here is to get several seconds of microgravity in the aircraft so that we can test the payloads. And so you can see on the diagram here, we see a typical parabola that will be used during the flight campaign. So the aircraft will start in level flight. It'll pitch up. We're going to get some, more than 1G during the pitch up. And then as the aircraft pitches down, that's when we get the microgravity. And so during that time, about 15 to 20 seconds, students will get the opportunity to test their payload in microgravity. And we'll also get the experience themselves of microgravity. We'll be able to unstrap yourselves and float in the aircraft, which is pretty cool. Over the course of the flight, which is usually an hour and a half, we're going to get 6 to 8, possibly 12 parabolas in to be able to test each experiment. Here's a little video here of what that might look like during the flight. So we can see here the aircraft pitching up. On the top, we can see the front view from the flight deck and then the cabin at the bottom. So here you can see we're getting up to the top of the parabola, and you can see near the top right of the top video, you've got the 0G indicator, which you can see just kind of floating around. So now we're in the zero gravity part. At the bottom, you can see components, computers, flipboards floating around. And so this would be where we would experience our 15 seconds of zero gravity. And then as the aircraft comes back down, everyone's going to get strapped back in as we start experiencing those Gs again. So CAN-RGX is really the only competition of its kind in Canada. We're the only ones really that have been able to secure this kind of an opportunity for students to test payloads in this manner. It also is a unique opportunity for people to be able to experience 0G as they're testing their payload. So it is also an opportunity for everyone to participate in a full engineering design cycle. So take you through all the phases of the project. You're going to gain valuable experience in project management. So just organizing the team, creating meetings, meeting milestones. You're going to learn about microgravity science and experience microgravity yourself. It'll also allow you to build relevant connections with industry professionals. So all of our subject matter experts that we use to guide through this process are industry professionals, as I mentioned earlier, from the National Research Council, Canadian Space Agency, University of Toronto, and MIT. You're also going to perform meaningful science and publish your work, hopefully. So all of these aspects are in line with some of the Canadian Space Agency's goals. And you're going to have to demonstrate how your specific experiment meets those goals as you're developing it. And finally, it'll help you develop your communication and presentation skills. So as you're going through different phases and milestones of the experiment, you're going to have to present your work to these various subject matter experts. So this is an overview of the CAN-RGX timeline. So it's called CAN-RGX 4.5 this year. Due to COVID-19, it's a smaller campaign than we usually run. So usually we run a campaign for 4 teams. This year, because of restrictions, we've decided to run it for 2 teams. So the proposals are due November 15th, 2020. It is fast approaching, less than a month to go. So teams will be announced on November 30th, and then that's when the real work starts. So, the first phase of the project will run until March 8th, and that's when we're going to get the preliminary design review. And after that, we're going to have the critical design review on July 5th. So that's when really the proposal is complete, and then we just prepare for the flight campaign after that, which will take place tentatively between August 9th and 13th of 2021. And that will take place in Ottawa, Ontario. So everything you need to apply to CAN-RGX 4.5 is available at seds.ca/CAN-RGX. You can also just Google CAN-RGX and it will take you there. So here's the important stuff that you're going to find on that webpage. So we've got the CAN-RGX student handbook. So that really is the primary resource. Any questions you have, you will hopefully find answers in there. It really details the steps of the campaign, any details on deliverables that student teams need to submit, and details on the flight campaign as well. So you'll have instructions to submit proposals as well, and examples of experiments from past teams, relevant areas of research if you need inspiration for, for the project, and as well as frequently asked questions. So,
all right,
any
so
questions?
question time. I think there was a question from YouTube, and that's what sort of experiments are expected to benefit or have benefited from this opportunity? So I'm just going to take the first half of that question. It's sort of a two-parter. Generally, the experiments that fly during CAN-RGX are within three categories. They're either some sort of life science type of experiment. So for example, looking at how drugs behave in microgravity for specific drug. I guess that's what I'm supposed to trying to say. Physical sciences, so just general fundamental physics experiments, and also technology demonstration. So for example, one of the teams that was actually featured in the video, Merge was looking at how you could sort of mitigate the sloshing effect when you refuel a spacecraft. So in microgravity, when you refuel, you might get sort of unwanted forces that make your spacecraft tumble in a certain way. So they were looking at sort of meshes in a fuel tank that might mitigate that sloshing effect. But we do have a previous participant on the line as well. Patrick, I don't know if you want to say something about your past experiment from previous experience.
Sure, yeah. So that's a great question about the experiments. Thanks for asking. One of the experiments that I was running when I was a participant in the campaign was about fluid dynamics. And one of the problems with long-term space travel and having systems that use fluid to make things, flow and things like that for heat transfer and a lot of applications like that, is that the use of pumps has a lot of moving parts and they wear out over time. So my experiment was investigating the use of high voltage electric fields to try and move fluids in microgravity and control their movement very precisely. And this allows for a type of application where you can have a pump that doesn't have any moving parts, and so it has a very long service life. So fluid dynamics is a very common experiment that we've seen fly in the past. Biological experiments as well. We have one team right now that's working on a very exciting fuel cell that's based on biological components. And what they're testing in their experiment is, can these fuel cells survive the hypergravity and microgravity environments? So there's a very wide range of experiments. And like Ben said, if you check out the website, there's a long list of different applications and different inspiration for experiments you might want to run. So that's a great resource for students looking to submit an experiment.
Awesome, thanks, Pat. Any other questions in the chat? Feel free to ask. There is a question here. Can we perform experiments on humans, animals, or living cells? So the short answer is sort of no. There is, the living cells thing is sort of a different ball game. There have been some experiments in the past, some of our biological experiments that are working on, like E. coli and stuff. But in general, no. If you're worried about sort of a topic that you want to cover, so you have an idea for an experiment and you're unsure if it would be eligible, we do have something that's new this year, a letter of intent form on the website, where you can sort of submit what you're thinking of doing. And then that's an easy way for us to sort of catch, oh, is this experiment relevant for this project, or is there something, that might not make this eligible, and we can sort of work with you to sort of narrow that down into something that might be a bit more applicable. So I would definitely encourage you to use that letter of intent form. It's just a simple Google form. If you're interested in the project, you can just fill that out and we can be in contact about your idea. There is another question. Can I apply if I am an international student? So this one is yes. So the only requirement for an application is that you are studying at a Canadian post-secondary university, or post-secondary institution, I should say. So if you're an international student studying at a Canadian post-secondary institution, that includes colleges, universities, CEGEPs in Quebec, you can definitely apply to CAN-RGX. Awesome. If you have any more questions, feel free to toss them in the chat. And if we don't get to them, we can get to them at the end or at the next question break. Okay. Moving on here. We have the Canadian Stratospheric Balloon Experiment Design Challenge, and James will be presenting this.
All right. Hello, everyone. So my name is James. I'm the project manager for CAN-SBX. You can go to the next slide. So CAN-SBX is a similar design competition as CAN-RGX, where we'll be working with the CSA to launch payloads. However, this time it'll be on a stratospheric balloon. So the Canadian Space Agency has built a balloon platform which will enter the upper atmosphere, so essentially the edge of space, where people can now test their payloads up in the upper atmosphere. So that provides a lot of exciting opportunities to get into space sciences, atmospheric sciences, and climate sciences. Go to the next slide. So the ability to launch your payload to the edge of space is incredibly exciting. And this competition provides a bunch of unique opportunities as well. So one of the main pieces here is you get to actually operate your mission while it's in flight, and learn how to actually operate essentially a real life space mission, and work alongside the CSA experts to do that. So the competition essentially requires you to design and assemble your experiment, and you'll have guidance from CSA experts throughout the whole design process. So a similar PDR and CDR process where we'll get you time with the Canadian Space Agency and you can work together to refine your design. As well, there's awesome experiences to build your soft skills, so communication and project management, and be able to take a design from an idea all the way to a physical experiment that you can run. And you can get relevant connections inside the industry. So you'll be working alongside experts throughout the whole period. Some of the past, competition attendees have also been able to publish their work and conduct actually really meaningful science out of that. So your work doesn't just end at the end of the launch. You can actually take that much further as well. Go to the next slide. So the timeline for CAN-SBX has a similar cadence as RGX. The proposals are due early November, so November 17th, about a month away. And we'll be selecting teams to go forward by the end of November. And this time we're looking around to get around 1 to 2 teams for this year. The preliminary design review will be similarly at the beginning of March. And then we'll have a critical design review at the end of May, right before our flight campaign which will be sometime in mid to late July. And that, of course, is still tentative based on the COVID situation in Canada. And our launch campaign this year will actually occur just outside of the CSA headquarters in Saint-Hubert, I believe. So that'll be in Quebec. And so just to give an idea of what kind of payloads have gone onto stratospheric balloons, we actually have 2 teams from the last year who will be launching in our 2021 campaign. So one from McMaster called NewDose, and they're launching a technology demonstration experiment to test out a radiation dosimeter. So this really sits in the field of space medicine to measure how radiation will affect the human physiology. And part of that is being able to get an accurate measure of how much radiation is our astronauts are being exposed to. And so they're trialing a brand new dosimeter design from their faculty. From Western, they're looking at more space medicine from chemistry side. So they're really examining how nutrients degrade in space. So they'll be flying nutrient samples and measuring how they've changed after being exposed to that radiation. So 2 very different designs that will be launched in our campaign. And so there's actually a lot of opportunities for you guys to come up with your own ideas as well. So to apply, if you go to our website, it's seds.ca/CAN-SBX. Here you'll find the handbook. So that will give you a really good idea about our timeline and what the requirements are to submit a proposal, as well as what the requirements are for assembling a team. And then there's also useful resources like past projects and areas of research and an FAQ where you can find other information about the project. All right,
Awesome.
So that was a really quick overview of CAN-SBX. If anyone else has other questions, please post them in the chat. And I think we've got a follow-up from RGX.
Yeah, we do have a follow-up from RGX, so we'll just answer that one right off the bat really quickly while it's still in your brain. They just wanted to follow up on the question about eligibility. The question was sort of, does the requirement or does the eligibility allow for students of any grade level or any science program? And so just to clarify, the eligible for also SBX as well as RGX, the eligible applicants are students at Canadian post-secondary institutions. And so that means university, college, or a cégep. So that's after high school. So you have to be in a post-secondary program in order to apply. But any program, so you don't there's no programmatic requirements. You can be in business and apply, but obviously we would want you to see, that you have some sort of team that is capable to actually, design and test and evaluate the experiment and things like that.
One question here is there a limit on how many members can be in my team? Nope, your team can be as large as you want. What we do require, however, is at least a faculty member to be an advisor, and one member of your team should be involved with, should have a SEDS membership so that they can get all the news from us.
Awesome. Another clarification on the eligibility. Can you clarify if any university level can join? Yeah, so first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, whatever year, mostly undergraduates. So let me get into that detail a bit more. If you're an undergraduate student, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever year, you're eligible to apply. We do, however, have a limit on the number of graduate students that can participate. So they can participate. It's just graduate students can make up no more than a third of the team. So this is really, focusing on undergraduate students. Yeah, a maximum of a third of your team can be graduate students, but any year of undergraduates can apply. Another question here, will lab space or equipment be provided to build our experiment? So this is a no. Teams are responsible for securing access to those facilities and equipment themselves to design their experiment. And this is a big reason why we require sort of a faculty supervisor. So they can help you, have access to, for example, their equipment or talk to the right people in order to make that happen within your school. Awesome.
Oh, just to tag on that, something that we can, however, provide is guidance on what kind of equipment and space you should look for. So you'll be working with representatives from this Canadian Space Agency, and we've also seen other projects ourselves. So we can give you guidance of, hey, you're trying to do this kind of experiment, you should probably look in this direction to find the resources you need. But you will have to work within your own institution to find those spaces.
Absolutely. And for CAN-SBX as well as CAN-RGX, like I mentioned before, there is that intent application on our webpage. It's a quick Google form. You can fill it out with your idea for a CAN-SBX experiment. And we can give you, any feedback on that experiment, or like James said, hey, have you looked at this? You might need this, that sort of feedback even before you submit your proposal. So I would definitely encourage you to submit that intent form. Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to move on. And this is now the YSpacE competition, or the Young Space Entrepreneurs competition. And I'll be presenting this. Now, what is YSpacE? Bit of a funky acronym we have here, but this is Canada's only business plan competition for students with a specific focus on the space sector. So through this competition, SEDS-Canada really aims to empower students maybe that aren't really in the business field or necessarily familiar with, bringing a product or service to market, with sort of the confidence to target problems they might find in the space sector, develop solutions, and obviously then hopefully turn them into profitable ideas, or have some sort of a framework for how to figure out if my idea for a product or service is profitable. So how do we actually accomplish this? We sort of aim to do this, but how do we accomplish it? YSpacE takes you through the creation of a business plan. So this is sort of a long form document that details, say you have an idea for a product or service, it'll detail all these bits about it. And some of these bits include a minimum viable product. So this is a fancy term for something that's sort of, what is the least amount of something I have to create in order to make money, or in order to solve the problem that's out there. The value proposition is sort of, does my solution really solve that problem? And why am I different from my competitors? A funding plan. So how am I going to get the money I need in order to bring my idea for a product or service to market? And then of course, things like target market and customers. So who's buying my product or service, and how big is that market? And of course, there's others. There's a bunch of sections. And what we do is we ask you to sort of work through these sections throughout the competition. So the competition runs from the end of October to the end of February. And within that time frame, there's 4 deadlines. So it will sort of say, do these sections, and that'll be deadline 1, do these sections, that'll be deadline 2, etc. And then after each deadline, we give it out to our industry partners. So we're curating that list now. We're doing our final curation of those experts that we're bringing on board. But some names like MDA Launchpad and Creative Destruction Labs, they'll be reviewing your business plan and then giving you feedback on it. So we hope via that process, you'll be able to sort of craft something that's, robust. This is the timeline. So I've highlighted here that first point, Saturday, October 24th. So very soon, that's the deadline to submit. Thankfully, the application to YSpacE is quite quick. It's just a quick Google form. We do have one webinar scheduled for the end of November. This is with Matthew Tweedy at Creative Destruction Labs, and this is sort of an overview of the landscape of space startups in Canada. The webinars won't necessarily be public, so even if you want to just take a look at these webinars, you can join the YSpacE competition. December 20th will be deadline 1, then January 10th, January 24th, and February 7th is the last deadline where your business plan would then be complete. And then this competition ends in a pitch competition. So over a couple months, you'll be sort of creating your business plan, and then at the end, you create a 5-minute pitch where we'll pitch to judges, and there'll be prizes, cash prizes to at least the top 3 teams. So that's the end of February, and everything's online this year. So this whole project, there's no in-person component; it's all online. Just a quick past team feature here. Kevin and Kirk, these were students that participated in YSpacE 2019 as Carleton University students. And their whole business plan was surrounded around space debris removal. As everyone knows, that's a big problem. So they found that problem, and they sort of had an idea to solve that problem. And so they were working on YSpacE as graduate students. And then following their participation in YSpacE, they founded their company that's now known as Orbruta. And they're developing novel space debris removal technologies, and they actually just won a Canadian Space Agency award to do some studies on their technology. So that's super awesome. You can just Google them and see what they're up to now. So like everything else, all of our stuff is on our seds.ca website. This is seds.ca/YSpacE. And here you'll find the YSpacE student handbook, the Google form application, and I've noted that it's quick, so definitely fill it out. You don't need necessarily an idea for a product or solution right now. If you're just interested generally in the concept of the YSpacE competition and you want to sort of learn about how to make a business plan, sign up. If you end up creating an idea for a product or service via the YSpacE competition, great. If you don't, that's fine, but you can still learn about business plans. You'll also find updates on webinars and partnering organizations there, and as well as everything else, and an FAQ that goes over basic questions. Awesome. So last round of questions here. So if you have questions about YSpacE or anything else, feel free to toss them in the chat. Okay, there was a last question at the end of the SBX question period that we'll just wrap up here. So is it possible to not be at a Canadian post-secondary institution and studying abroad, but have a provincial student number? So we require that you are studying at a Canadian post-secondary institution. During the COVID situation, we recognize that you might be somewhere else, not in Canada. But if you're registered at a Canadian post-secondary institution, then you are okay. I think provincial student number might relate to a high school, unsure, but definitely if you are a high school student studying abroad at a non-Canadian university, you wouldn't be eligible. So you have to be studying at a Canadian post-secondary institution. Another question specifically for YSpacE. So how can I come up with a good idea for a product or service? And this is a really good question. This is what sort of business people are always looking to do. And this is sort of the hardest part of this whole thing. So really what it is do you have an interest in something? So related to space. So for example, maybe I'm interested in Earth observation. Now, what I should be doing if I'm really trying to find a problem within Earth observation, I would maybe talk to customers that are using Earth observation data, right? And literally asking them, what would you change, or what problem are you facing? That sort of thing. Just talking to people is really how you can best find a problem. Maybe reading articles is another great resource, but it's definitely hard. So if you have any sort of baseline ideas, say, or interests, if you have sort of interests in Earth observation, but you're not sure where to start, feel free to shoot us an email. We'd be happy to sort of point you in some hot topic directions to see if it interests you.
Add on to that. So if you're just starting out in exploring the space industry and not really sure what is out there, because there's a lot of stuff that space technologies touches, a lot of space institutions like NASA and the CSA have resources on the website for spin-off technologies. So I think NASA's spin-off is actually a whole news article that they release of just technologies that came from a space idea. That's a great place to start to see what is active research and what are people thinking of, and then you can start pulling off ideas to say, well, what's next after that? How can I make this better, or what problems still exist after this solution? So really encourage you to look at those large institutions that are compiling this knowledge.
Awesome point. There was one last YSpacE question here. Can I apply as a team? And yes, absolutely. Individuals or teams can apply to YSpacE, and that's just a question we have on the application form. Awesome. Okay. So let's just do a little bit of a review. So if you're ready to apply, here's what you do. You form a team with a cool idea for an experiment or business idea, right? For YSpacE, you can participate individually, but I mean, the more the merrier. For SBX and RGX, you'll need to find a faculty advisor to help support your projects. For YSpacE, that isn't the case. And then the third step is submit the best proposal or application you can. And sort of ingrained between step 2 and 3, send us an email. If you have any concerns at any point, shoot us an email. You can find all the relevant emails on the web pages that were listed today. They're really easy. It's like YSpacE at seds.ca, SBX at seds.ca. So there's also a general contact form on our website that you can shoot any questions off into. So before you submit your proposal or application, you can always shoot us a question, run ideas off us. We would love to hear them. And just a final reminder of the deadlines. CAN-RGX is due November 15th, so in a month. SBX November 17th in a month, and YSpacE October 24th, which is a week from now. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live. And one final reminder, we have another question and answer session today at 5 p.m. Eastern, as well as Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And also share it with your friends, and we'd love to have you join us at our next Q&A live. Thanks for joining.